his town in Sheboygan Falls, Wisconsin. So the only thing he's a Packer fan, but I told him we let it slide this time, one time, right? So, but with that being said, Randy obviously is passionate about sharing information about non-24 to help get the word out and make sure people understand that the issues and challenges that are surrounding this disorder. So, Randy Meyer, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Roger. Hi, I'm Randy, and I'd just like to thank Vanda Pharmaceuticals for sponsoring me to be here today to share my story of living with non-24 sleep-wake disorder, or non-24. Most people think my biggest handicap and challenge in life is my blindness, but I view non-24 as my real handicap. Non-24 makes everything I do that much harder and unpredictable. For instance, picture yourself laying down and taking a nap. No problem, right? Now picture yourself waking up from that nap in the middle of a noisy NCAA wrestling tournament. Stranger yet, you are a competitor in the heavyweight division, and your name as you slowly wake up, your name has just been announced as on deck for mat 3. Is this just a weird dream? No, it was my reality competing as a heavyweight wrestler in college, living with non-24. Although at that time, I didn't know what to call it. I just knew I always had a hard time sleeping on a normal schedule like everyone else. The night before that tournament was typical of many nights for me. I went to bed early with the plan of being rested and refreshed and ready to go in the morning. However, going to bed did not mean going to sleep. Sometimes when my sleep cycles were off, I'd find myself falling asleep during the day, but at night, any distraction could be enough to keep me from finding sleep. That night, the distraction was 2 girls chatting with my roommates. Even though they left by 9:30 that night, I lay awake in bed for a number of hours. I finally drifted off to sleep at 4:30, only to be awakened by my alarm clock 2 hours later at 6:30. Since I had to be on the bus by 7, sleeping in just was not going to be an option. 2.5 hours later, after I woke up, I was wrestling my first match. After my first match, the lack of sleep really hit me. My adrenaline was enough to get me through that one, but I knew adrenaline wasn't going to get me through the next one. My body and brain demanded a nap, and they were not going to be denied. I laid down against the wall of the gymnasium, took my first quick nap, and woke up in time to wrestle my second match. To get mentally prepared, I would envision myself winning, but it was hard to have a vision of success when I was just so tired. I repeated that process of napping and battling during that long 12-hour tournament, which is very similar to the battle I have fought with non-24 my entire life. As far back as grade school, I had a hard time falling asleep at bedtime. I went to bed, I went to a special school an hour away from home and stayed with a local family during the week and was just really home with my family on weekends and vacations. Sorry, I turned my page and lost my place here. And I was really I felt kind of alone because I was staying with this family and I wasn't able to talk with my parents during the week, because that was actually back when long distance cost a lot of money and you just weren't allowed to make a call just because you wanted to talk to mom or dad. But my situation was made even worse by the fact that no one understood my sleep problems. I would lie awake at night trying to count sheep and every other adult suggestion, and nothing worked. I would be tired during the day and scolded for falling asleep at school. The stern advice was to get more sleep at night. I was a young kid trying to explain a serious problem. I wanted to sleep at night, but I couldn't. None of the adults believed me, and my parents were far away. I felt isolated and alone, so I kept my sleep issues to myself. By high school, I noticed that my sleep patterns were much different from all of my friends. They were never as tired as I was in class, and at sleepovers, I was always the last one awake. Since I was the type of kid who asked a lot of questions, I started to read everything I could find about sleep and to try and find an answer to my issue. I learned about circadian rhythms and light-dark cycles and how they affected sleep. I thought, I wonder how a totally blind person fits into that standard light-dark cycle box. Could this be what is affecting my sleep patterns? I shared my thoughts with my friends, but they just knew me as an athletic kid who stayed up too late watching the news, which they thought was kind of strange. They would listen to me for a while, but they would ultimately dismiss my theory and go on to talk about other things. As a teenager, I desperately wanted to fit in, and my blindness already made me different. I remember worrying that falling asleep at weird times might cause me to lose friends. After being teased about my theory, I really just stopped bringing it up. It wasn't until many years later that I learned the answer I was looking for was non-24. When it came time to go to college, I really started to notice a pattern with my sleep cycles. It seemed like I would have about a week and a half of normal good sleep, followed by about a week and a half of really bad, poor nighttime sleep. I define poor nighttime sleep as 3 hours or less. But the thing was, I could never catch up on the sleep I missed when I was having a good sleep cycle. And with non-24, even during a period of good sleep, 7 to 9 hours of sleep is very rare for me. In high school, if I was tired, missing class wasn't an option. My parents said, nope, you're going to school. Don't care how tired you are. In college, if I had an early class and I had a terrible night's sleep, I would just simply not go. Although I did find out the hard way that not all teachers taught straight from the book. Some of them told stories in class, and that was on the test. And if you weren't in class for the story, that was a little problem.
Exactly.
I developed techniques to hide my tiredness. I tended to keep my head down, which made it difficult for others to tell if I was truly sleeping. I always taught myself to come awake without appearing startled, which has really been a skill that's been very useful to me. You know, drinking caffeine or energy drinks only really gives me temporary relief, and actually makes my long-term sleep patterns even harder to predict. So it's kind of a short-term gain, long-term loss. I rested when I could, but I still couldn't help dozing off. However, despite non-24, I became an All-American wrestler and Hall of Fame wrestler. After my college graduation, I began working as a financial planner, which allowed me a lot of flexibility with my schedule. If I couldn't sleep in the middle of the night, I could just simply get up and work on someone's financial plan. You know, many of my clients would be surprised to find out that many of their financial plans were put together after midnight. The day after poor sleep, I could come in later. I had a little flexibility in my schedule. But good sleep or bad sleep, if I had a morning appointment, I just simply had to be there. And because I had to track my hours for financial planning, because you kind of bill by the hour, I noticed that there was really a wide, weird pattern to my work hours. One week, I could put in 12-hour days and work well over 40 hours in the week. And that could be followed by another week where I'd have some days of less than 8 hours of work. I certainly was averaging well over 40 hours a week, but if you graphed it out on a graph, it certainly wasn't a straight line. It kind of went all over the place. Sometimes I would lose focus at group meetings. not truly falling asleep, but rather just kind of losing track of what was being said. I was afraid I would fall asleep in front of my bosses. I always wanted them to perceive me as a competent, as a competent and competitive, and that my blindness had nothing to do with my ability. I didn't want them to perceive my sleep issues as a weakness, so I continued to hide my sleep problems. Non-24 continues to impact my professional life, especially since I've been elected mayor of my city, which means I have a lot more meetings on my plate.
Yeah.
Good thing I'm a motivational speaker who practices what I preach. I can't expect the world to adapt to me. I have to adapt to the world. This isn't just something I tell my audiences, it is a philosophy I live by. I always have to keep my sleep patterns in mind and adjust my schedule if possible. When I have a lot of evening meetings and I'm going through a bad sleep cycle, I'll try to sleep in or rest in the afternoon. Exercising in the morning seems to help energize me, although there are some days when I'm quite frankly just too tired and exhausted to exercise. Those days I have to give myself a pep talk and plow through. There have still been some meetings where I've faded out. You know, my head's not on the desk snoring, but I'm not following what is being said and what is going on. I try to keep these instances few and far